Okay, so welcome to this universe. We're going to study C++ functions. So let's go to the television that says C++ functions and let's... Okay, so welcome to this tutorial on C++ functions. C++ functions consist of a declaration and a definition. The declaration is a single line statement of how the function is going to be called or created. And the definition are all the function, the declaration plus all the statements that consist of the fully working code for the function. C++ functions accept parameters, but they are not required, return values, but a return value is not required, and can modify parameters if given explicit direction. Here we can see a function declaration, a single line. It has a no return type, void, no return type, and it has no parameters. Here we can see a syntax for the definition. So we see the declaration without the semicolon and all the statements that build this function. Okay, so here we can see a function prototype. It has a header, it has a return type integer, the function name, the parameters, the actual values of the parameters. If you pass, for example, a tree, is called argument. Here, inside these curly braces, is the body that is all the statements, and finally, if it has a return data type, you need to return at the end of the function, you need to return the result of the function. So this is the header, the body, all the statements, and the function name and everything. So C++ array and pointers. C++ does not allow arrays to be passed to functions, but as we have seen, it does allow pointers to be passed. Functions passing constant argument. Here we can see that we can pass a constant argument as input, and the function cannot change the input value. If the function change this value by incrementing or this integer or decrementing, it will has a compilation error, so it will not work, or maybe a error. Okay, so function declaration and definition. We want to see again this topic. The function name consists of the declaration, the return type, and the parameters, if any. And the definition is the body of the function, is a code that is going to be executed. So the definition fully defines a function. With the definition, you can put it at the top of the code and you don't need to declare it, but it's a good practice to first at the top declare it, in the bottom define it. But the definition is a fully defined function. Function overloading. With function overloading, multiple functions can have the same name with different parameters. So for example, we can have a function that returns an integer, the same name function that returns a float and receives as a parameter a float, and the same name function that returns a double and receives two parameters, two doubles. So we can have a function with the same name, but overloading means to change the return type and the arguments, or in this case the parameters, the data types. So whenever you invoke this function and you pass it a float, it will return a float. But if you call this function later in the code and you pass an integer, it will return an integer. Let's work with functions. So the first thing we're going to do is a good practice to, in the top part, declare the functions. So for example, we're going to use the most basic function, that is a void function, return type void, and it's going to say, for example, print message, and we will pass a string of message, name message, as a parameter, and we're going to see out the message and line. So we need to include the string library. Okay. So for example, we can, using the main part, we can say, for example, print message, and we pass a string hello world. And if we compile, sorry, so we compile and then we run hello world. So for example, we can pass the function to the down part, or if we compile, we're gonna get an error. So undeclared. So we can declare it at the top. So we can just declare the function, just put void print message and string message. So now if we compile and then run, we can see the hello world. So the next thing we're going to do is to work with overloading. So for example, let's work with function overloading. So we can have, for example, a function that sums two numbers. So for example, sums two integers, so integer sum, and we're going to put int x and int y as a parameters. So this is the declaration, and in the down part we're going to put the actual function with all its statements. That is only one statement, x plus y. So overloading means that we can have another function from the same name, but the rule, if the function has the same name, it not has one different parameter. So for example, we can put double x comma double y. So here we're declaring an overloaded function of name sum, and in the down part we're going to actually return the x plus y. So let's, for example, run a sum, and let's see out the sum of, for example, 10.3 so it will run the second function. So how do we know it's overloading? For example, we can here see out using double. So if we compile, we run, we see we are using the double function because we are passing a double as parameters. Okay, so finally when we can finish, we can come back. We get out of the plate.